Hello and welcome to CISI TV. I'm delighted to introduce you today to Karim Rashwan from AdvisorStream. Good morning, Karim. Thank you very much for coming. You've come a little bit further than the majority of our guests. Karim is all the way over from Toronto. Pleased to have you here.
Thank you.
So really as a sort of starting point, I know that AdvisorStream came along to our financial planning conference in 2019, so it was great to have you there. I know you spoke to a number of financial planners and spoke about what it is you do. As a starting point, could you just give us a flavour of AdvisorStream, who you are, what you do, and who you typically work with?
Sure, yeah, thank you. So AdvisorStream is an automated digital content marketing platform. Really what we do is we license content from about 40 different publishers around the world, 7 of which are based here in the UK. So just to name a few, we work directly with The Guardian, the BBC, The Economist, Mail on Sunday, Money Mail, The Independent, and The Evening Standard. And we automate the delivery of content on behalf of financial advisors. So financial advisors really being our core market. And we deliver content on their behalf through all their digital channels, so through social media, website posts, blog posts, email and newsletter communication.
So what we're really talking about here is helping financial planning businesses with their marketing strategy and also content.
Exactly, exactly.
And in terms of content, obviously there's a couple of types. There's stuff that can be already created or curated. What could you maybe just give our members a bit of a flavour of the differences?
Yeah,
of the two?
So we curate content from third parties. So really curated content would be content that's of course created by third parties, so the publishing partners that we work with. We curate content that's largely personal finance focused and really focusing on financial wellness. About 20% of our content is considered lifestyle. We also do have original content in our library that we allow advisors to use. So advisors can create their own original content and include in our library, or we also have writers that will create content on behalf of advisors. So that's more the original content.
I see. And is it, so advisors, when they're trying to sort of, think if they have a particular theme that they're looking to sort of push out to their clients or prospective clients, they can identify that through yourselves. So I'm just thinking something like, later life retirement.
Yeah.
Certain periods of their life that they can then sort of push out. Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. I mean, typically advisors won't go and source the content themselves, even in our library, which is why we automated based on their preferences. But we also really automate based on what their clients are reading. So, in other words, as they share content with clients of theirs and prospects of theirs, we're able to effectively build a consumption profile on that individual and know what kind of content should be delivered on behalf of the advisor. So it's really meant to be, in the end, very targeted communications based on what will resonate with clients, what's engaging, and what will position the advisor as a thought leader.
Right. So it's basically taking the advisor, giving the advisor the tools to actually push out content that is relevant, that's hopefully original, and saving them time in terms of what they do, in terms of running the business.
Exactly.
That's the gist. Well, that sounds excellent. In terms of the delivery of the material, I mean, one of the things we have from our marketing team here is that you send out emails, no one reads them, and how do you get around of that? How do you get out of that trap? And how do you approach that challenge?
Yeah, so it's a huge challenge. The reality is that when the typical advisor newsletter is monthly or quarterly, typically focusing on something that may have happened in the markets a month or 3 months ago, and or something that is just general kind of financial planning. What we found is that because of the partners we work with being highly credible, world-leading publishers, and because of the content being fresh, daily, relevant content, the engagement rates that we see are quite high across our entire network. We have engagement rate, open and view rates effectively that are 3-4 times the industry average because the content is so current, it's relevant, and it's engaging, and it's coming from sources that typically most clients of advisors aren't going to subscribe to, or even source for that matter. It's just it's too time consuming and it's too expensive because they'd have to have subscriptions to multiple publications. So we're able to get around that just by virtue of the fact that we have such strong relationships with leading publishers around the world.
Okay. You mentioned there about industry averages, and for our members watching today, what would be a industry average for an email open rate in this space, and how does it compare to what you can do?
So the typical open rate in financial services specifically for email communications is about 20%. the view rate, so the actual click-throughs to content,
Yep.
to articles, is only about 2.5%. What we're seeing across our network is 2 to 3 times the industry average for open rates and about 3 to 4 times the industry average for view rates. So people clicking through to the content.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it actually promotes sharing a lot more. And so when clients share content, it actually helps the advisor get their name out there and build their brand and also capture new leads.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I was keen to talk to you today about, a lot of the feedback we get from our financial planning firms is that they generally grow their businesses through client referrals. There's an element of marketing, of course, that goes on. How do you sort of tap into that? Because obviously referral is very powerful. What's your sort of spin on it in terms of how you help and leverage the number of client referrals that they could get?
Yeah, so when content is shared, so really we capture leads or referrals in a couple of ways. When content is shared by an advisor to their client, if that individual shares the article or the video with someone in their network, we are able to capture a lead for the advisor because we trigger an opt-in effectively.
Right.
So it allows the individual receiving the article to opt in to receive communications or newsletters from the advisor. So it's done through digital referrals effectively from the existing network from the advisor. We also capture leads through inbound channels, meaning social media or websites. So for example, an individual visits an advisor's LinkedIn page, they see an article that we've posted on the advisor's behalf. They can open that article. If they're not an existing client, we know that based on the fact that there's a cookie tracking effectively, and we also are able to trigger that opt-in. And so there's inbound and both outbound lead capture based on the channel that the advisor is communicating through.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm no marketeer myself, but as a financial planning firm who are looking to differentiate themselves, how can they do that? Is that through selecting themes and they can sort of put a bespoke message to their clients through yourselves? Is that basically how they can differentiate themselves, or is there another angle?
So that's definitely one way. Typically with the firms we work with, depending on the size of the firm, of course firms create their own content, and we're able to include that content in our library and in the newsletters that we deliver on behalf of advisors. So I'll give you one example. We work with a number of firms where basically we'll create a newsletter. It's a suggested newsletter that we deliver on behalf of all of our advisors for a specific firm, and the firm will include their content, we'll do it for them in the newsletter, and support their message with third-party content. So for firms that do create their own content that aren't able to get their message out to clients through their existing advisor network, by positioning their content alongside credible third-party publishers, it really boosts their message, enhances the credibility of what they're trying to push out that week or that month. And so for firms trying to position themselves against their competitors, having that kind of co-branded thought leadership does provide a lot of value.
Yeah. And thematic themes that you can sort of identify in content according to those themes that the advisor wants to actually sort of target.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever the message might be for a week, it could be an event, it could be a theme around retirement planning. Certainly if there's during tax season, or if there's something going on in the markets that the firm would want to educate clients on. There's really a number of different messages that every firm will want to push out at any given time. Sometimes it could be product focused, and so we'll try to really build our newsletter and our communications around that message, working in tandem with both the marketing and the compliance departments of the firms that we work with.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things which I guess with anything is we're talking about financial planning. It's important to have a plan. Yeah. And I guess a marketing plan is equally as crucial in terms of frequency. And what would your, if a firm is either starting out in terms of their marketing plan or a little bit more established, do you give them rails to run on, or do you have any sort of top tips that you could give in terms of duration of blogs? I think I sort of heard sort of stats that sometimes when you start a blog, it takes many months, if not years, to actually build a loyal readership. Yeah. So what would your sort of tips and recommendations be if someone was starting out a marketing plan for advisors? How would you approach that?
Yeah, so for a small firm or for an IFA, typically, because again, the platform is automated for us, but generally speaking, we would recommend to web posts, blog posts, social media posts at least daily.
Right.
Because it may sound like a lot, but generally, if you're not posting something daily, and you know how people scroll through Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, it's very quick. You're just not getting your message out there as often as you could. In some cases, we see twice daily posts from advisors, but we recommend at least daily for inbound channel marketing, like the social posts and web posts, blog posts. For outbound communications, newsletters in particular, we always do recommend weekly, which again sounds like a lot, but what that does allow is advisors, again, to have that regular touch point and allow their clients to consume the content and share it. And that's really what we start by recommending that. We don't ask advisors to do it manually because they won't,
Yeah.
and so that's why we recommend getting something in place that automates the process. And so, but ultimately, it's up to the advisor. If they find that daily posting is too much or weekly newsletters is too much, they can change the frequency, and can their clients. Right, so.
And what about sort of content out? You mentioned there's sort of social media, sort of LinkedIn, Twitter. You can automate that through.
Absolutely.
I see.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always recommend it being automated, because if you do leave it up to the advisor, in many cases, it's just not going to happen.
It's human nature that things get left. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, Karim, a little bit about client engagement, the benefits of it. So in terms of stats and if you've got engaged clients, what does that actually mean, and what are the benefits?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important question, and what we found is, and this is where we've seen some studies out there, we see it with our own platform, but the reality is that engaged clients do actually refer, and it's been shown that engaged clients refer up to 5 times more than disengaged clients, and will actually invest more in the long run. Because the reality is that if your advisor is not communicating with you, and you feel that they're not there, even if they're not calling you or asking you to come in for meetings, having that regular touch point of newsletters, or just seeing the activity on social media, or seeing that their website is updated with fresh current content, it shows that your advisor is actually aware of what's going on in the world, and shows a level of engagement that actually resonates really strongly with clients.
I mean, a lot of our financial planning members will meet family across the whole family. They're not just meeting with their clients; they're meeting with their children. Yeah. So again, engagement with the next generation is vital. It's huge. For advisors to retain the relationship. So again, I presume you would sort of agree with that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's one of the messages we really try to drive home, is communicating with your clients' children is critical. Mostly, of course, because of the wealth transfer. Everybody knows, the numbers, and you can dispute $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. It's a big number. It's a lot.
Either way.
And if advisors are not communicating with their clients' children, the likelihood of the children keeping that advisor, having the assets remain on the book, is very low. It will impact, of course, the advisor's ability to transition that book to a new advisor, and of course affect ultimately the income stream they're getting off of that book. So. Sure.
So in terms of, we spoke a bit there about engaged and disengaged clients. Some clients will leave their advisor. What are some of the reasons for them leaving the advisors? Top few reasons.
Yeah, I mean, so interestingly enough, about 10 years ago, the number 10 reason why a client would leave an advisor was lack of communication. That has moved up to number 2, and it falls just behind high fees.
Right.
And right above poor advice. So if you think about that, a client has more of an appetite for poor advice than to not receive any communication at all. It makes sense if you think about, during down markets or anything that might be going on in a client's personal life. If they're not hearing from their advisor, they're likely to think that the advisor's either left their business, doesn't care, is not interested in servicing the client. So it does make sense, and I think over time we're going to see that creep up, possibly to the number 1 reason why clients will leave an advisor.
Yeah, I mean, it's as I say, when you look at those numbers, 40% fees, but shortly behind the communication. So clearly, vital part of
Absolutely.
it is ultimately a relationship that they have. So very, very important. So a few moments ago, we spoke about the the benefits important of engaging with clients and also their children. Typically, in terms of the number of times you should actually meet with the children, what is your views on that?
I mean, we've seen that when we've spoken to advisors who are actively engaging with clients' children, the frequency that we've found that works really well for advisors is over more than once a year. The scary stat out there that we found, though, is that almost 70% of advisors will meet with their clients' children once or less than once a year. So less than once a year being zero, obviously, which is a shocking number. 70% of your book, effectively, you're not meeting with the children. The likelihood of assets staying with you are extremely low. And just to give you a little personal story on that is that I look at my own family situation, my father's advisor, and the only thing I know about my father's advisor is that she's female. That's the only thing I know. I don't know who she is. I've never heard from her. I don't know her name. So the likelihood of the assets staying with her, when the assets transfer to myself and my siblings, is extremely low. And I use that as an example because I don't think I'm I don't think I'm out of the norm, really. I think that my situation is pretty typical in most cases.
Yeah, and when we talk about these numbers, is this US and Canadian focused, or is this globally? What just
this
to sort of clarify?
This is actually a global stat. This was a US study done, but this was a global stat that really applies across the board in all three markets that we operate in. So UK, Canada, and the US. And the reality too is that the average age of an advisor is about the same in every market, about 56, 57. So they're coming up on they're coming up on transitioning their books at this point and not meeting with the children, or just starting to meet with children now. In some cases that might be too late. Right?
I think here in the UK, family meetings are becoming far more far more the norm, which is great to see, and these are some of the reasons for that.
Absolutely.
One of the things in the UK that we're always looking over the pond to see what's going on in the US and in places like Canada in particular, looking for trends, trying to see what's going to be coming this way.
Yeah.
Marketing trends. Obviously, you've got the luxury of having presence in the States and seeing what sort of how the marketing sort of landscape and engagement with their clients' landscape has changed over the years. What have we got coming in the next sort of few years, in your opinion?
So I think there's going to be obviously a push more towards automation. That's been an ongoing trend that we've seen. So really taking the work out of the advisor's hand. They're really trying to free up time to have advisors focus on what's really helping them build their book, which is managing the relationship. So automation, thought leadership. So not delivering marketing communications that position the advisor as selling products or selling time necessarily. It's about thought leadership. And then, of course, a big factor that we're seeing coming out of really all three markets, in fact, the UK being a leader in this space, is on the compliance and regulatory side with marketing communications, where you're not just going to be able to share a link to content to 400 clients because, frankly, that puts you offside with copyright laws and with the publishers. So making sure that what you're sharing is actually legally licensed content or original content is very important, and we're seeing that trend really more so actually take hold in the UK and then make its way over to the North American markets. Those are really some of the three big trends that we're seeing, and we think that over time it's not going to go away. If anything, it'll strengthen.
Yeah. And you mentioned there briefly about sort of copyright sort of issues and so forth. And in terms of putting out content that's someone else's, but equally relevant to their clients, presumably that's something that's covered, and anything that's actually sort of pushed out is you're able to do that.
On our platform? Or?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean we're really one of the only ones, if not the only ones in the space right now that legally license content from publishers, and we know that from seeing what's out there, from speaking with our publishing partners, and the reality is that it's okay for individuals to share content, a link here and there. Like you and I could share a link to a story. That's great. It's not a great experience for an advisor to share a link to content that has paywalls or ads all over it. But if you're using an article to communicate to your entire network and you're trying to market yourself as a thought leader, that's where it starts to become offside.
And that's, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So from day one, we believe that the route we would take is license content, make it a good experience, premium experience, but also keep ourselves on side with copyright laws.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be quite useful, we spoke about sort of poor open rates and engagement and click-through rates and things like that. Do you have some examples of articles of what works and what doesn't work?
Yeah.
Just to sort of give our members here just a bit of a flavour of the do's and don'ts on when you're sort of putting out a particular article.
Yeah, I mean, what we find is that, funny enough, the articles that we find resonate the most and actually get shared the most are more lifestyle-focused pieces. So, for example, travel destination pieces or food and wine related, that kind of thing. Those tend to be sort of very easy to consume pieces of content. So we always like to recommend in newsletters, including a couple of pieces of content that are very light in terms of again, lifestyle-focused pieces. But what really resonates with clients, with advisors' clients, is basically the keep calm and carry on content. So things like the markets may be crazy. There's certainly a lot of negative news with whether it's the economy or viruses or health or whatever it might be. And so we always like to look at we always recommend content that really tries to help bring clients back down to earth a little bit.
Yep.
That's what we find resonates the most. That's what we find really gets the highest engagement rates, but also the publisher source itself, right? So because we work with a number of premium publishers, there's certain brands for sure that definitely have stronger open rates and stronger view rates than others, because they're simply harder to access for the average individual.
Sure.
So strong brands, frankly, like The Guardian or The Wall Street Journal or Barron's, BBC, et cetera, like those are brands that typically resonate very strongly.
Resonate the best, yeah. One of the pieces of regulation that we've had in the UK is all around client segmentation and the importance and need to actually do that. And I guess just sort of in this discussion today, segmenting your sort of client base is important because you can then identify the different sort of marketing messages that you want to actually convey. I mean, is that partly what you do with on the platform in terms of identifying the different sort of areas, i.e. the children and different sort of demographics?
Absolutely. In fact, so not only do we recommend, of course, advisors segmenting their books themselves and bringing that information and that segmentation over into the platform when they upload their contacts or synchronize their contacts, but we've also started to auto-segment lists based on consumption profiles and consumption patterns on behalf of advisors. So what we've done is said, okay, well, based on what this group of clients is reading and consuming, and the articles, the videos, et cetera, that they're consuming, we're segmenting a list, maybe calling it a business owner list or a millennial focus list or retiree list, whatever it might be. And that way, it's not only auto-segmented, it's auto-populated, it's auto-created for the advisor, and then targeted communications can be delivered based on that. So we're not trying to replace what advisors are doing already, but we are finding that for marketing purposes, being able to create lists and frankly, auto-create them for advisors to be able to send targeted communications is a critical part of any marketing strategy, because you don't want to be sending your millennial clients the same kind of content as your retirees and vice versa, right? So, yeah.
Is it very important?
Exactly.
Yeah. Karen, thanks very much indeed for coming in. I hope you've enjoyed that and found that useful and enjoy watching on CISI TV. Thank you.
Thanks. You so much.